Hey there, welcome to Spice Files. This is the Lobstercon 2 edition. The DFB is here with me once again. Then this was an event that you hosted, so I thought I'd at least ask you, are you recovered from the the weekend?
Yes, it's been a full week now. I
Hmm.
think I actually didn't start to feel normal until about Thursday.
Hmm.
Reached a point on Thursday at work. I was like, oh, I kind of feel like okay now.
Sure.
But we threw a hell of a party.
Yeah.
We had 122 players, 7 rounds of Swiss, and people came from all over the place. It was great. We had Jeff Willard, one of the beasts of the
Yeah.
Bay, came out
Hmm.
from your neck of the woods, and we had people like Sean Sullivan from the Seattle Emerald City Trolls. We had some Europeans with us, the Brothers of Fire, Mari from the Knights of Thorn. It was a bunch of Canadians came down from Quebec and in Ontario. I mean, it was I don't know, no other way to describe it really than just a really fun party, and I happy to play host every once in a while.
Sure. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
Well, yeah. So I know you gave out plenty of Spice Awards at the event itself, right?
yeah, that
Um,
was definitely a focus,
mhm,
and we ended up giving out I think 14
mhm.
like Spice Awards, and that was sort of mostly a function of how many like prize cards I had to give out.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
so and it was not just me judging. We had a small panel
Hmm,
of people that I pulled in to kind of give me some extra opinions about
sure,
how to sift through and rank them. And different things jumped out to different people, which is always going to be the case, right? As with
sure.
uh, any kind of spicy judging, it's super subjective, and
Hmm.
but there was so much to be excited about. Not only like the people who were spicing really hard, but there were some also some pretty interesting, like the top 16 was pretty diverse,
Hmm.
and there were some non-traditional decks that did really well.
Hmm.
And that as a TO, that was super rewarding to see.
Yeah, that is really cool to see. I think it's definitely a good format, and the Lightning format in general, and it kind of uh, I don't know, fosters that sort of ability to have a lot of different decks, right? Which I think was part of the original goal
Yeah,
you
that's
had when.
that's exactly it. That's the hope.
Yeah.
The idea is just supporting as many, like as a diverse a range of archetypes and strategies.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, it was really nice to see how it all shook out in the end.
Hmm.
Let's say we kind of jump in. I know, like, so
Sure.
you had the tournament report, and so obviously the ones that were officially like awarded Spice accolades at the event, we can look
Hmm.
at some of those. But you also picked out a few
Hmm.
separate to that, so maybe we could start with one of those.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, that sounds good. So this very first one is decked by I'm not quite sure how to pronounce everyone's last name, which is always a trick with some of these things, but
Yep.
Matt Ascenti.
Yeah,
Um,
it's Matt Ascente or something like that. Yep.
yeah, and what really just kind of stuck out to me was it's essentially an enchantment alteration kind of aggressive strategy, which is kind of neat. It's mono blue, but it's got some Pendelhavens in there because you've got some Flying Men and Zephyr Falcons to kind of go along with it. And yeah, it was just a very cool array of creature enchantments that you then kind of get to play. And there's cool stuff that happens when you swap it from one thing to another. Uh,
Yeah, I actually had to look up enchantment alteration. So for those who have not been acquainted with this card, um, it's an instant. It costs just 1 blue mana. Attach target aura attached to a creature. So attach an enchant creature spell, or an enchant land spell
mhm,
to another permanent of that type. So it can be a permanent that you control or that your opponent controls, and vice versa.
mhm.
So you can do a lot of pretty funny things. So he's got a bunch of, so he can move the psychic venoms, he can move the control magics, he can move the
Yeah.
backfires, the unstable mutations,
Mhm.
and just kind of play, just play games basically. So
Yeah.
like one of the drawbacks with unstable mutation, right, is if you put it on your flying man and they go to bolt it, or
Mhm.
cast swords to plowshares, like you get 2 for 1, right?
Right,
Well,
right.
with enchantment alteration, I guess you still get 2 for 1, but you can keep your your enchant creature and bump it to somewhere else, which is
Right,
pretty
right.
sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, I also I feel like looking at the decks that you awarded for Spice, we saw a fair amount of Psychic Venom as well, which is, you know, somewhat surprising. It's a pretty cool card though, and I think it's one that doesn't get played enough. And this is a cool place for it, right? Is you can, you know, make sure it stays on the land that is your opponent's best land, right? It doesn't have to.
Yeah, you could start moving them around. Like you could heap a couple onto your opponent's best land, or I don't know, or spread them out if it think that you can get more damage in that way, I guess.
Yeah.
Backfire is a kind of a funny card, and I kind of like it here with, you know, he's got the Flying Men and the Falcon and the Freeze, so he's pretty aggressive, you know, with the unstable mutations as well. Backfire, like, it's not amazing, like, as your only control card, but if you're racing anyway, like, it's fine, right? It guarantees the damage that you're taking from your opponent's creature. You know, your opponent takes as well. It's sort of like an eye for an eye effect. Like, you still have to take the damage.
Yeah.
But it's going to kind of guarantee that you're never like losing a race, I guess, unless it's like the last hit that you take from that creature, right? It's kind of like Spirit Link in that way. Like it triggers once you've taken the damage from the creature that's enchanted.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, that's a sweet little card, and it's a kind of funny quasi removal here. Another thing I love about this deck is I'm always a huge fan of the off-color Pendelhaven. The Pendelhaven is really, like, for me, Pendelhaven is the like the equipment that 93-94 doesn't really have. Like,
yeah, sure.
Kronos' weaponry and Zellion Sword and whatever are just not that good, but Pendelhaven is that, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Love the card.
Yeah, but anyway, yeah, very cool deck. Yeah, and I also kind of like that it's mono blue. You know, there's not a ton of things that you can really do in mono blue that aren't like things that you've seen, maybe Merfolk or, you know, thing like that. You know, so kind of just having something different is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's pretty funky. Cool deck, man. All right.
So next up we have, and I'm going to butcher this name.
Oh yeah, Yves Larochelle. Who came down from, I believe, the Quebec city. So we had like 3 major Canadian communities represented. We had the Quebec City, the Brew crew guys. We had the Montreal Tundra Wolves, and then we had the Ottawa, the Capital Chaos gang, formerly known as Cremini Love. And so, Ontario and, you know, Southern Ontario, or I guess whatever you would call Ottawa area, and the 2 bigger cities in Quebec were really well represented.
That's very cool.
It's like a 6 or 7 hour drive for most of those places. So anyway, so this is a sweet deck. He's got like the full. I love the full 4 copies. Full play sets of Lich and Mirror Universe and Eureka, just like kind of laid out there, like, you know.
Yeah.
This is who I am. This is what I'm doing.
Exactly. Yeah. He's definitely committed to the plan, right? Definitely seems like a good Sylvan Library deck as well. Like you're just looking for all these pieces, right?
Yeah, you're looking for your pieces, and you can also deal damage to take advantage of Mirror Universe later. So it is like, it can function like a straight mirror ball strategy, but I just love the ability to, like, how do we, you know, cast an enchantment that, you know, that costs black, right? Well, the answer is we don't. Eureka into play.
Yeah, I mean that seems so much better than, I feel like you often see your normal Lich deck with, like, it'll have Dark Rituals or something like that, like trying to facilitate being able to cast the
like,
thing, you know.
Dark Heart of the Wood and Fast Bond and all that stuff. Like, you know, cut out all that nonsense. Just like, just slam Eureka, and hopefully you can protect the mirror and the Lich until your next upkeep, basically.
Yeah.
this is a deck that really wants like, I don't know, a bunch of time walks.
Yeah, that's true. I do also like the one transmute artifact. I think that is a card that's probably not played maybe quite as much as it should be. It's really very versatile, obviously, right? It's a tutor.
I agree with that. I like Mana Drain here does some extra work. It's a deck that like any mirror deck is also going to benefit from the mana burn environments, right? EC, Atlantic, both use mana burn. So that's always a consideration here. But yeah, just the I don't know, the fun nature of combining a card that literally puts you at 0 life. Which literally says you lose all life.
Yeah.
And Mirror Universe, just like a slam dunk. And then he's using actual hard counters, counter spells, and mana drain to protect that stuff instead of like, you know, in these more green heavy lists, you'll see Void Fates or something.
Right.
Anything else to talk about with his interesting sideboard? So he can bring in Juggernauts, I guess, which are fun with he's got main deck Abysses, and he has Silexes, maybe as a nod to the Robot Menace. I don't know.
Makes sense. I've seen that before. It certainly has I think a place. It works pretty well here. I mean, I think the only card that he has from that set is not a permanent, right? So I don't know. He has a workshop in his
one workshop.
Yeah,
but still.
Yeah.
This is a really cool list. I'm hoping to hear some stories of really sick Eureka's that were cast. And
what's this card down in the bottom right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I was trying to like zoom in, but I don't have like resolution is not high enough. 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So he has 15. It's not a sideboard card. Obviously, it's not illegal. Is it some kind of like token or other?
Must be something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I knew.
Yeah.
I wish I had a story there, but
yeah, I'll have to get to the bottom of that.
Yeah, indeed. Maybe somebody will run in and tell us for the Quebec.
Yeah, very cool deck.
Yeah, awesome deck.
All right. Well, next up we have Andy Vaccaro again. Right, we've seen him on here before.
Yes, he's a known spicer in these parts, and hot off of his spicy Players Ball performance. Right. He's back at it here with this is basically like an all-in demonic hordes deck.
Yeah, makes sense.
There's a bunch that you can do. So obviously he's trying to cast them quickly off of like the rituals and the mana vaults. If you're going to do that, you need Yawgmoth demons too. So these are both cards. Hordes and Demon are both cards that like do terrible things to you in your upkeep.
Right.
But he can kind of get around those drawbacks. First of all, Hordes, for people who don't know, like there's an upkeep trigger, basically. So if you don't pay the upkeep, you can still respond to the trigger by using the Horde's tap ability. So you still get to destroy an opponent's land. So you can do that sort of before the Hordes tap themselves and destroy one of your lands. So he can take advantage of that. So even if the thing does become tapped, he's got instill energies to untap them. He can paralyze his own dudes to give him another way of untapping these big creatures that you want to attack with generally. Yeah,
I have a memory of I think when we did the Spice Files for the Summer Derby, that was a thing that could happen in, I feel like it was Jeff Lou's deck from out here, because I remember he was playing some demonic hordes in his deck. And,
Hordes is having a little bit of a moment, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, instill energy is probably the better way to accomplish that, but
definitely. It's definitely the black mana vortex. Call it that.
Yeah.
I mean, I love So yeah, there's a bunch of things to get into here. Like, I love that this is sort of it's a control deck, right? Like,
Hmm.
he has in the main deck Hellfire. You know, he has the Paralyzes. He's got Underworld Dreams. He's got a couple main deck mazes and a tabby,
Hmm.
um, with the option of bringing in looks like what in a maze, some other
Hmm.
like one for one removal. Um,
Yeah, an extra drop of honey.
yeah, I
Hmm.
mean all that stuff combos super well with these big like. I mean, he only has these big fat creatures, right? He's got
Hmm.
these six creatures and then the factories.
Right.
And yeah, he's hoping to stick one of these things. Like if the upkeeps become too onerous, he can juxtapose it,
Yeah.
juxtapose one of them to his opponent. God,
That's pretty great. Yeah, actually, the Fellware stones, I mean, maybe they're necessary just to make the mana work, but I almost wouldn't want them just because when you juxtapose, you'd rather like give them your tapped mana vault, right?
you want to get them the
Something
mana
like
vault
that,
for
but
sure.
it might just be needed.
Yeah, I mean, I think you need them for demon food,
Mm,
and
makes
just
sense.
help casting.
Sure.
They help fixing too, right? He's on
Mm,
what's like what bug colors.
mhm.
So it's another blue source basically, another green source.
Hmm.
Yeah, man, this is a sweet
Yeah,
deck.
very very cool. Like just a bunch of cool one, singletons basically, right? Like
Yeah,
that one juxtapose, the one Hellfire, which is
uh-huh.
a card that
Yeah,
doesn't get played very much either, which is
right. The
really cool.
one drop,
Hmm.
the one tabby. Yeah,
Hmm. Yeah, but yeah, all these cards like they definitely serve some double duty and do a lot of cool things, or they're like a unique effect that you maybe can't get out of something else. So
exactly.
yeah, it looks pretty cool. I
Yeah,
love it.
well done.
Hmm.
All right.
Let's see. Next up, we have
Yeah,
Andrew
Andrew,
Oliva. Is that right?
another Yawgmoth demon deck.
Yeah, definitely his time in the sun, I guess, huh? Uh,
Man, this one's super cool. So this is it's a Colossus deck too. Um,
mhm.
and he's got all these different ways, just like we saw with Andy's deck. There's a bunch of ways to untap your guys.
Mhm.
So like you can attack with the Colossus and you can maze it back after damage. You can paralyze your Colossus to make it cost 4 to untap instead of 9. You
Mhm.
can obviously saddlebags your Colossus or your demon.
Yeah,
I love Onulet. You can, Onulet is like perfect demon food,
yeah,
because it gives him some life back when he
yeah.
sacrifices it.
That's
Uh,
cool.
Monolith is perfect here for casting your creatures that have what is demon? It's like 4 black.
I think so. Yeah.
And then Colossus obviously at 9. Like, come on,
Hmm.
that's sort of the perfect help there. In addition to
Hmm.
the full complement of faults and the dark.
Yeah,
He's trying to do some big things.
yeah. And I like those Priests of Yawgmoth also. Um, that seems pretty cool, especially like if you have a Colossus out that maybe you're in a board state where you can't actually untap him. You don't have a maze, you don't have a whatever. You can
Yep.
just sack him and get a bunch of mana.
Yeah,
And
turn into mana.
mhm.
Yeah, Priest of Yawgmoth is like a kind of unsung member of the. Well, he's like a mirrored pair, sort of with Sage of Latnam, right?
Right.
He's part of the like was it 1/1 and a colored mana for a 1/2 that has an ability. I
Right.
guess in a way Atog is part of that cycle too.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah,
funky set antiquities.
definitely. Yeah, I'm also loving that, there's basically more than one deck that's had Paralyze in it so far. I actually really like Paralyze, and I think it's a card that just in general doesn't get played as much as
Yeah,
it
yeah, I
probably
like
should.
Paralyze a lot.
Hmm. It's like the only black generic removal spell, that actually hits anything. I mean, obviously
Yeah,
it doesn't really kill them, but
because
um,
Terra doesn't do anything against a lot of things.
mhm,
I mean, I guess the only issue with Paralyze is you can't paralyze a factory, which is like what I would really want to do most
true.
of the time in decks that would want Paralyze.
Hmm.
But it is, I mean, I especially love Paralyze outside of like combo situations here, which are pretty spicy and fun.
Hmm.
like if you're like a really low to the ground deck and you don't plan on getting to the late game anyway, like,
Right.
Paralyzed becomes a pretty attractive option. I agree overall that's it's overplayed, or sorry, it's underplayed by a lot.
Right.
You should see a lot more action.
Mm-hmm.
Jandos Saddle Demons.
Yeah, indeed. It's a very cool deck. I like it. All right, and actually, that to also point out, it's a mono black deck, which is another monocolored deck we have on here.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so next up we have Don Perrion. I think I'm pronouncing that last name correctly. This actually, I think, just personally, I love Singleton, so I actually really, really love this deck. This is his Highlander, Spirit of Connor McLeod deck, right? With what I have to assume, I'm hoping that this is a playmat. Is this a playmat?
Well, it's hard to say because like he has clearly like this is an amazing deck photo first of all because they're clearly his cards. You can see the reflections of like light like on his sleeves and stuff. But what he's done is he's like sized the cards differently.
Oh yeah, he has, hasn't he? Yeah.
In the image, right? You can see like his mana base and like his non-creature like cards are represented smaller. His sideboard is even smaller.
Right. Okay. So it's not a playmat.
Very fancy like composite deck photo, which I think is a pretty like a new technique that we have not seen. And I think there's some spice points there too, right? Like
sure.
No, this is marvelous. I was flipping through the deck photos and happened upon this and my jaw dropped. This is great.
I'm sure it caught your eye as well, right? I feel like the photo it's just very it's very striking, just all the gold cards and all that. Totally. Just visually speaking, it's very, very striking picture. Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's fully 5-color. He's got basically all the best like legends that have like interesting abilities and actually do things. Oh man. And what else should we get into? I mean, so he's got Caracas.
He has the Caracas has his on combo.
One of every duel. What else is going on here? I'm just like looking at his non-creature spell choices.
Well, he also thematically does have all of the legendary lands, right? Not just Caracas, but he's playing all 5.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah,
Teleria for value.
Right, exactly. Actually, I kind of
Flood Moon. I mean, you might as well just put Teleria in over an island, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, and clearly, you're not necessarily trying to optimize when this is your strategy, right? Yeah. I mean, it's meant for thematic purposes, right?
And out of the park on that score for sure.
Yeah, but I do honestly kind of wonder like how well it played, because one thing I've sort of noticed one thing I'll do actually, since I like to play Singleton, is I'll often bring my Singleton deck with me when we do a normal meetup, and we're going to play old school. Yep. And it's nice to have because, if people want to play, like, if the old school deck I have with me is not, really particularly spicy, then somebody else has a spicy deck and they don't want to play against whatever I might have, like let's say it's ATOG or something.
Yes.
I can play my Singleton deck against them and just kind of do what I'm doing, and they're going to do what they're doing, and we'll kind of see how it plays out. And I've kind of felt like Singleton decks, they have a pretty good amount of play to them actually. And and one thing that kind of helps them out is your opponent tends to like not know what is going to happen, right? You can predict a lot of things when people are playing normal decks and stuff, but
you get some edge that way for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
There's not a lot of great ways to kind of like plan, right? Like, because it's by its nature, it's going to be more or much less linear. I've done the same thing. It's good to always have a Singleton deck on hand, and worst case, exactly what you just said. Like if someone's spicing, and you only have like a tier 1 deck, otherwise you can step down the power of your deck and still have some really interesting and interactive and cool games. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I wanted like look at, so he's got like one of all these really like obviously individually powerful cards, like you need stuff like Disenchant and Shatter and Regrowth, Fireball, Balance. Main deck Terror is an interesting call. And I'm looking at his sideboard, which has some haymakers like, Disc and Icy, and
Desert Twister.
yeah, sure, like Earthquake, but he also has like Alabara's Carpet
Right.
and
That's awesome.
a Millstone, which I don't, who Lord knows when it's time to bring in Millstone and
Right.
which card you take out from Millstone.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my god! But this is great. This is just great. Super, like, just I've never seen this done. And yeah, I'm sure he actually like has a lot of cool like stories and funny interactions and things.
Yeah, definitely.
It's super rewarding to watch decks like this kind of unfold as they do their thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely very cool. Yeah. So next up we have Luke Sinan, who played a Blight Skull-of-Worm recursion deck.
Yes. Which I think Luke called like something like F you for wanting to play a game of Magic or something like that.
I see.
It is it's sort of a meme, I guess, in a way. He's got 3 main deck mazes, the Tabby,
This is another deck with Paralyze in it.
Yeah, yet another Paralyzed deck. There's a theme for the day. He's got the full complements of Sinkholes and Blights. And he can, of course, get the Blights back later with the Skull-of-Worm. Icy's, what is, I see, that's a Soul Ring. It's like a funky, it just looks like a funky color on my screen.
Yeah, I definitely like the Ices with the Blights, right? I mean, that seems pretty awesome.
Yep. Yeah, right. Just tap the land down and kind of force the issue.
Right.
Paralyzed and Icy work very nicely together.
True.
So
yeah, they basically, I assume your opponent just like wouldn't bother, right? I mean, why at that point try to untap your guy? So it's kind of more permanent removal, or semi-permanent removal at that point.
Yep. Yeah. Main deck Abysses, which I guess you can get back with the Skull later.
Yeah.
Main deck Crypt, because it's always good to have some tax tower hate. The main deck Flux is an interesting choice. Given that he's got some,
you can tutor for it, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Just kind of depending on how the game is going to go.
Yeah.
He can audible into a lot of different cool things. He's got like a greedy tower package in the board. Yeah. He can pull some more fluxes in. He's got the 4th maze. Like basically, like this is just like a really funky control deck. How is he winning the game?
I mean, does he need to?
I mean, at a certain point. I guess technically not, right? You can just go to 50 minutes and
that's right,
and flip some orbs. That's
apparently, yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I see it.
Crypt is the win con? Do you think Crypt is the win con?
I mean, it kind of looks like it. I don't see a way to deal damage.
Yeah. Right, no factory, because why?
Yeah, there's no factory.
So why mess up your mana base?
Yeah. So, yeah, and I also don't see anything in the sideboard.
Yep. Yeah. So he's literally crypting people out, or maybe killing them with Brain Geyser.
Yeah, that's another plan. Yeah, I guess you need a lot of mana to do that, but
and meanwhile, just like stalling everything, like impeding their development. Hemming them into the Stone Age. I don't know.
Yeah.
Luke actually did pretty well with this.
Did he? Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, like, the 1 Tormod's Crypt win condition is, from a deck construction perspective, it's like the very minimum space you can possibly use and have a win condition, right?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. It's very.
So in some ways, it's kind of optimal. Maybe not, but you get what I mean.
Yeah, Luke went 4-3 in matches with his sucker.
That's cool. So, that's very cool.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. Yeah, I definitely like this deck. I also this makes me think of one that we're not going to cover, but Adam Mercado Weiss had another deck that had Skull of Orm, and it also had Warp Artifact, which I thought was kind of cool too.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but just a little, his deck was like a different take, but this is making me think of that. And I think Warp Artifact is maybe a card that doesn't get played.
Yeah.
You know,
kind of like a more like a distress type deck with different pinging cards and another. Yeah, we won't cover that one, but
it's very cool. Yeah, check it out for sure. Yeah,
you have a chance to look at the report. Yeah. Definitely worth a look also. All right.
Next up, we have how do you pronounce Jason's last name?
Jason Beaupre.
Okay, got it. So this deck's really cool too. It's a Consecrate Maze control deck. It actually, when I first saw it, my first thought was, well, this will show all those people who really hate Maze of Ith, right?
yeah, and I think that's sort of like where this started.
I assume that must be the joke, basically, right?
Yeah. Like, oh, you think you thought you hated unrestricted Maze before? Well,
right.
Now I'm literally indestructible, and yeah, we'll see how you feel after that. So Jason is the defending Lobstercon Spice Champ from last year, and he made it to second most spicy this time around. This one he called Ron Jeremy, aka the Big White Deck.
Right.
And there's a lot of layers.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh. So there's a package of really good creatures, right? You've got orders, you've got angels, you have a Triskelion, a Tetrabus. Personal Incarnation, actually a really good card. Especially if you are getting to the late game, which he clearly is, hiding behind his indestructible mazes.
Right.
Or indestructible factories.
True.
Which, although Consecrate Land, it doesn't keep them from taking lethal damage, right? It protects them from destroy effects.
Correct. Yeah, that's true.
Should probably look that up.
Yeah, I think that's right. But I mean,
nope. I was so wrong. Yeah, I mean, man, I love it. What I love about old school is that, like, even now, like, how many years are we into playing this freaking format?
Right.
There are still things that I have to look up and like be delighted like when I find the answer. Consecrate Land, Enchant Land. Enchanted Land has indestructible and can't be enchanted by the fact literally not die if they take lethal damage.
Wow, that's awesome.
Which is incredible. Because I don't know what the original wording is.
I mean, it definitely uses the word, oh no, it says all enchantments on target land.
Yeah, all enchantments. Is it? Yeah. So
it uses the word destroy though. I'm kind of surprised that it has indestructible.
No, I think this is the current errata for Consecrate Land make it a much stronger card.
Yeah.
Than as originally printed.
Yeah, I mean, with Mishra's Factory, of course, right? I mean, there's not much else.
Right. Yeah, there aren't many other lands that can take damage, right? But Factory was printed, not that long after Alpha.
Right.
And here we are.
It's very cool.
Gosh, yeah, that's insane. Okay, so he's got indestructible mazes and factories as required. What's the card above the strip mine?
That's Soul Ring. It's just
Soul Ring. Yeah, it's just a bunch of scribbles. Yeah. Gotcha. He can play all kinds of crazy candelabra games with his factories and his mazes. He can make more mana to bring out his bigger creatures. I do love angelic voices here.
I was just noticing that as well.
Yeah, it's sweet. It's angelic voices. Like, man, it's like not good, but I think it still might be underplayed overall. I've used it in actually in a singleton deck, and I played White Weenie and Beast singleton. And it's actually having a one-sided anthem that only benefits you. Like, it's not like Crusade, right?
Right.
It's just your creatures.
Right.
And so that gives +1/+1 to his factories, to Triskelion, to Tetravite when they split off of Tetrabus, which I think is the probably the
Oh
best
wow.
combo here.
Yeah, I've actually never thought of that. That's pretty amazing.
Martyrs of Corliss are keeping him from taking damage off of his tapped mana vaults,
Mm-hmm.
which is pretty hot. Yeah, there's just a lot of, and then he's got, some good cards, Swords and Disenchant.
Mm-hmm. Things to just keep
About-
things running smoothly, right?
Yeah. So he's playing. He's got a wall in the early game, and he has 1-to-1 removal if he needs it, and then eventually behind his basically indestructible wall, he's got all of these really really hefty threats
Mm-hmm.
gonna be coming down the pipe. This is a really cool deck. I'm a little surprised I don't see an Armageddon, because I think Armageddon consecrate shenanigans are also a thing.
Sure.
But even so, yeah, I love that this deck, the sideboard easily supports Bottle.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't care about he doesn't have Cities of Brass or anything like that. This is great, pure white brew.
Yeah, I like this Circle of Protection blue.
Yeah, blue, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Just in case you needed an extra screw you to people playing Serenity. It's your indestructible mazes were not enough. You have access to copy blue.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a really cool deck.
It's very cool. Yeah, pretty awesome. And actually, again, this is another monocolor deck. I hadn't thought about that before we started this, but we're seeing a handful of monocolored things, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, and we had some pretty successful monocolored decks in general, on the whole. This one, second most spicy. He did pick up 3 match wins also.
It's cool.
Yeah, this is really fun.
Very awesome.
Moving on.
Yeah. All right. Next up, we have Mark Flora, Elephant Disco. This is a very cool deck, and I have to admit that when I first looked at it, I was like, what are those elephants doing? And then I remembered that Elephant Graveyard is a land, and it was there, of course, right? But
100%.
But I didn't notice it at first. I was like, what am I missing? And that's exactly what I was missing.
Full playset of Elephant Graveyard, which fortunately makes mana.
Right.
And that's a really important element of that card's playability, such as it is.
Yeah.
But otherwise, this is sort of this is actually a really well considered Bant disco, right?
Yeah.
It has a lot of the things that you would normally expect from the disco archetype. You have 3 main deck mazes, which work. Disco is really the natural home for multiple mazes. That's the tier 1 archetype that benefits the most from the unrestriction of maze in all these. And that's and you've got factories and discs. Disco is really it's a land superiority archetype, and he's leaning into that. He's got a full play set of Ice Storms, and he has access to Armageddon out of the board. And all of that, I think, really supports that strategy really well. Just the funky thing is that all of his creatures cost 4 mana, and they're all 2/2s and 3/3s. But
yeah, it's okay though.
They regenerate.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, Sedge Troll is just
is also a 3 mana 2/2, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, it ends up at 3/3, but I mean that's basically what you're working with, right?
That sort of costs 4 because you need to keep a mana up to generate it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I have seen the disc elephant and graveyard combo before, but I just liked the individual choices here. Yeah. Everything, aside from the elephant in graveyard thing, there's a lot of synergy with the other choices that I think this is a kind of a vision of what Bant Disco could be, leading up other than Sedge Troll.
Yeah. One thing I also noticed is that it appears like every card does not have a double mana cost, right? So it actually makes it very easy to play all the cards in this deck, which is really nice. And sometimes it's just really, really hard to do that, right? I mean, if you think about normal disco, it's usually got counter spells, and or it's something is like
yeah. There are usually two branches you can go, like blue for counter spell, or some now are heavier in black for like hymns and stuff. The other kind of branch of the trolls and discs tree,
right?
But yeah, the everything is kind of splashable and like really very very accommodating color requirements. And yeah,
I kind of wonder about the ice storms. I mean, I was in my head, I was thinking, they're for the mirror match, so you can kill your opponent's elephant graveyard. But obviously, that's not the case, right? But yeah. I kind of wonder like what exactly their plan is. What is the plan for them?
So, like I said, I think Disco, it's a land superiority deck, and you like after Disc goes off, like you have factories around. Like they're usually the only thing that survives Disc explosion. But your opponent also could have factories. So killing the opponent's factories is actually really, really important.
I see.
When you're
and I guess you have fewer ways to do that because you only have one strip mine, etc.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yep,
definitely makes sense. Very cool. Yeah. I think that the sideboard seems like it's got stuff for like all the relevant archetypes, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
you've got Shop's H, you've got Blue Bless is even good against like ATOG or whatever. Psychic Purge is also a very cool card, and him is a big deck, right? So
yeah, hymns and orders are everywhere. Rich Shea was saying on All Things this week that he likes Psychic Purge basically wherever you can use it, because he brings it in against the deck actually.
Oh, really?
Expecting to get Mind Twisted for hand at some point.
Jeez.
Which works a little bit better in a very aggressive list like ATOG,
right?
Or like blue-red counterburn or something. Maybe less so with a grindy elephant disco deck.
Yeah.
But still, it is just a funny and still kind of spicy thing to have around where you can just gotcha somebody, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can see having it in boards in formats with him to Turok, right? But maybe not if you don't have that card in your, if you're not playing Fallen Emperors, right?
Yes,
it's a little less useful, but very, very cool deck. Enjoyed talking about that one. It's got a lot of cards. I mean, just the elephants are are pretty awesome.
So, well, I love the War Elephant art. It's just like so realistic. It's like just paint an African elephant, basically.
Yeah.
It's like the art direction.
Yeah.
It like doesn't even have to be like in a fantasy game. It's just like an elephant.
Right. pretty cool. And then the clones also are entertaining.
Yeah, a couple more elephants, obviously.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's probably more than one time that he copied something that wasn't an elephant, right?
Like something awesome on the other side, of course.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, clones all make for really good stories.
Yeah.
All right.
So next up we have a deck by Andrew Callahan. This deck it's not a disc deck, but I feel like it contains a handful of cards that often show up when people build like a mono red disc deck, right?
Yes.
Got the rook eggs and the chain lightning sticking along with them, and but that's like usually where that kind of ends, I guess, right? Like, is that those things, rook egg works with chain and it works with disc, and then you kind of have enough of enough pieces to like easily assemble, and get the rook token, right?
Yeah.
So here, this is kind of a different direction, and I thought this deck was pretty cool. One, he's telling us the number of mountains he has in the bottom right. It's 17, 17. Which I thought was entertaining. And the other thing I really like about this deck is there's just a handful of different things that like all kind of work together. So and a lot of it is centered around Stone Giant, I think, which is, again, I mean, I feel like I say this a lot, but I feel like he's just a red creature that doesn't get played as much as maybe he should. Like, it's a 4-drop that doesn't die to Lightning Bolt, right?
It's 4 toughness, yeah. Really relevant, yeah.
But in this deck, he can actually give the Ball Lightnings flying, for example.
Yeah.
without it doesn't matter that they're going to die in a turn because of the Stone Giant's ability, right? So
Yeah,
you
exactly.
just kind of let them do their thing. There's also those giant strikes up in the upper right hand corner, which I'm sure. I mean, you could put those on whatever you want, right? I mean, you could put them on a rook egg and go to town,
Yep.
or you can put them on your Stone Giant so that he can actually use his ability on the rook egg if you want to, right?
Totally. Yep.
Stuff like that. Same thing can be said about immolation. You can do a similar
Well,
sort of thing there.
Immolation is marvelous because it's a removal spell. First of all, you can kill an opposing Hypnotic Spectre or
Right.
Order or Savannah Lion or whatever. It's like a very efficient.
Hmm.
It can be a shock if you need it,
Yeah.
but it also enables all these insane shenanigans with these other cards, right?
Yeah.
Like especially if you're not worried about like 1-for-1 removal, like bolts and stuff from your opponent, like
Hmm.
you can put it on, on the
Yeah.
Brassman, you can put it on the egg. The great thing about Rook Egg is that it doesn't have defender, right? It can
Right.
attack.
Right.
You can bloodlust it. You can,
Right.
a 4-1. I mean, there's all
Yeah.
these just hilarious things that you can do.
Yeah. Bloodlusted and then give it flying with Stone Giant and
Yeah,
right. It's pretty cool. Um, so yeah, I mean, it just seemed like there's a pretty good amount of cool stuff going on in this deck, and then you can see in the sideboard as well. There's some discs, so you can kind of still have that strategy that we kind of were talking
yeah,
about before,
right. I mean,
if you need it.
God, I love the ability to bring in vices when you know you're on the play,
Yeah.
in game 2 or 3.
Hmm.
Um, Shatterstorm is obviously super well positioned generally right now,
Hmm.
and you can easily, get away with running it with no artifacts really to speak of other than the Brassman, which you can easily, take out if he cares about that.
Yeah.
Land's Edge is great insurance against flooding in a deck like this, where you
Hmm.
do need you do want 16 or 17 red sources to be able to actually hardcast your ball lightnings.
Sure.
Man, yeah, there's just so many sweet little interactions and corners, and I feel
Yeah.
like no two games with this are necessarily the same because, like,
Hmm.
immolation it can be turned on or changed into different turned on or changed like the effects of what it does depending upon what your opponent is doing.
Sure. Yeah.
And man,
Hmm. Yeah,
wow.
so there's cool stuff, and then
Yeah,
also it's a budget deck, if you will, right? I mean, it has no power. It has
yeah,
a strip
unpowered.
mine and a soul ring, and I think those are the only restricted cards, right?
Yep, yep.
So it's just really cool, and
Yeah.
yeah,
No, and he
so
and he pulled down 3 match wins with this one too.
nice.
Yeah, really,
Yeah.
really cool finish for
Yeah, I
a
mean,
deck.
it's got strong cards, right? I mean, you're
Oh, absolutely.
all your stuff deals damage, or you end up with a good removal spell, or rook egg,
Yeah,
so
I mean, I just want to. I would love to hear some stories from this one too.
yeah.
Just the ball lightnings they got to fly, or the eggs they got to fly.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Cool immolation kills.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, so this one was really sweet, and this one actually made me think of what you were saying earlier, like a more traditional mono red, like Rux and discs.
Hmm.
Ted Quartler, whose deck we won't get into in depth here, but he actually ran a version of that deck to a 15th place finish.
That's awesome.
He was unpowered also. So
Mm.
to have a mono red budget deck with like Rux and discs and ball lightnings and stuff in the top 16, that kind of thing is exactly like where I want to as
Right.
a tournament organizer, I'm super happy when stuff like that happens.
Yeah, for sure.
So that was the top unpowered finish.
Mm.
But like same kind of thing with Lawrence Boulanger, who's from
Hmm.
the Montreal crew. He was on basically mono blue Merfolk.
It's cool.
He took home 10th.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean there were the top 16, like I said, was pretty diverse, and there were just some um, offbeat decks that you don't normally see at the top tables that were doing really impressive things. Yeah, I was really thrilled to see that.
That is really cool. Yeah.
And actually, we have one more to share. A
Hmm.
deck that made top 16, but also took home a prize for Spice,
Yeah.
which is like the holy grail in any kind of old school tournament.
Right. Exactly. Right.
You check both of those boxes, you're doing pretty damn well.
Mm-hmm.
So should we pull up that list?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So yeah, this is Guillaume played a Candle Surge deck, right? Um,
Yeah, Guillaume Soucy, he's like the godfather of the old school scene in Quebec City.
Gotcha.
He's been a tournament organizer going back at least 3 years.
Cool.
Like some of the earliest like tournaments really on like the the eastern part of the continent, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
were his doing back in the day. This is and he's a great pilot, really skilled brewer and player. He did well at NoobCon this year. And yeah, and he made it to, I think, was it 13th overall with this one? Let's pull that up. Yeah, he was 13th overall, and he got a prize for spice. Also, the panel deemed him 10th most spicy.
Nice.
So top 16 in both columns. Really, really awesome outing.
Yeah. I love the picture, obviously, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I feel like it's one of the best pieces of artwork to arrange your deck in, if that makes sense. It just it lends itself to that, right?
Well, and I like how he's actually mimicked the height of the different candles in the art. Like he didn't just like candelabra, like he actually like there's some attention to detail here.
Sure. Yeah.
That should not go unmentioned, I would say. So like there's a lot that you can dig into. Like Candle Surge is sort of a known.
Yeah, a little. Yeah.
I mean, so Dane Malone just did his thing at Players Ball. A month ago now, and there's an All Things Considered episode about that you should listen to if you haven't already.
Definitely.
But I like a lot of the individual choices here. I also like the transformative sideboard into the Evil Eye deck.
I'm just noticing that, yeah.
So awesome. Yeah, so if your candle surging isn't working out, you can completely you can board in whatever 9 or 10 cards into the Evil Eye deck, which is Evil Eye, of course, non-eye creatures that you control can't attack.
Right.
If you all you have are clones and doppelgangers,
right.
You can have as many eyes as you need, and it's actually like kind of a beefy and interesting creature.
Yeah.
And that is
definitely. It's a 2/5, right? For 5 mana.
Is it a 2/5 or like a 3? I think.
Is it a 3/6?
I think it's a 3/6. Hang on. We're gonna get to the bottom. It is a 3/6.
Nice. Yeah, that's those are pretty good stats actually.
And it's unblockable, for Christ's sake. Evil Eye Orange can't be blocked except by walls. So it's pretty much unblockable. And the drawback is that your non-eye creatures can't attack, which is basically just the factories.
Right.
Because he's creatureless in the main.
Right.
That's cool. And everything else is an eye or clones an eye. So
yeah. I do enjoy that strategy, to be honest with you. I think it's something that gets just overlooked more than it should. Actually having like a main deck, for instance, that has basically no creatures in it, and then boarding into something that's a creature strategy, it's really hard for. I mean, people don't know you're going to do it, right? So it's really hard for them to board appropriately, right? And and then you really just end up with what often seems like an easy game too, right? Because you're just like playing stuff and they just don't have answers for it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's pretty cool.
It's very cool. I'm looking at a couple of these individual. He's got like a 1/4 fork in the main, which is just like super fun. Main deck Reb. He's which once you get to the top tables, that thing is worth its weight in gold. Does a lot of work.
Yeah.
Main deck Bottle. He's only got. Is he even running City of Brass?
Nope.
Awesome. Man. Yeah. No,
He doesn't need them, right? Like the cities, I was thinking. I mean, he's
no,
okay.
I mean he's in like
The only double mana cards are red, and he's maxed out on the red from the duels, right?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, true enough.
so I mean, I'm sure some cities may help or something, but they're not. They don't seem like they're like,
Yeah,
he's not. He probably didn't miss him too much.
yeah. And yeah, some control elements here. Main deck Abyss,
Mm,
obviously creatureless. Main deck Earthquake is a nice call for the meta for
yeah.
sure. Couple main deck mazes. Yeah, he just put up a really strong result with this 1x2.
Mm.
13th overall. Yeah.
What's the actual wording on Power Surge? Like when does the damage actually
So it
happen?
checks it before you untap.
Uh-huh.
It checks the number of untapped lands that you have, the opponent has, and then does damage accordingly. So obviously, it goes without saying, only a card that works in mana burn environments. But the funky thing is that he can use candelabras to untap his opponent's lands.
Right.
Thereby tapping his own lands probably, and making sure the opponent's lands are untapped ahead of their or make sure the opponent's lands are tapped, ahead of their untapped phase, so they can all the damage from that.
It makes sense. Yeah, and I guess
pretty sweet.
It checks the number, but I think it deals the damage on your upkeep, which is weird. But
really?
Yeah, well, because like things can't happen during your untap step.
Yeah.
But the trigger actually happens in the upkeep, which is kind of
so it remembered. Yes.
Yeah, it just like remembers the number.
It checks the number of untapped lands you had at the beginning of your turn.
Right.
And then damages you accordingly in the upkeep. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Not that probably like ever matters, but
I like
it's happening at like the same time as Black Vices and that kind of stuff.
It's
right?
not trigger like any other.
Yeah.
I like the ruling. This card knows how many were untapped, even if it was not on the battlefield at the beginning of the turn.
Nice.
I'm scared. I'm scared of cards I'm scared of two types of cards: cards with memories,
right.
and also cards that choose things like floral spasm.
Right.
Enough of the sentient and conscious.
Yeah, we don't need the Wizards FAQ ruling staff helping the sentient nature of old school cards. Probably.
Yeah, you remember?
We've got enough problems.
Yeah, we really do.
Anyhow, yeah. So yeah, this is a super cool deck. I'm glad that this kind of archetype exists and people are playing it and that sort of thing. It's really cool. And but I do have to say, I think my favorite part is the sideboard plan.
I agree. No, I mean, old school is just better with decks like this, like with strategies like this that are able to exist at all. It's just a funky and hilarious way of combining. I mean, this deck with the Ormspygor like sideboard, I can safely say that this is not like no one has built this in the history of Magic. Like this 75 is completely unique, and that's just like the amazing thing about this format is that static card pool, the rules really don't change that much. We tinker around the edges of the B&R list or whatever, but generally it kind of is what it is, and we're still seeing these kind of off the wall, totally novel and wild things, and people are winning up results with them, and that's that's just worth celebrating.
Well, that's the last deck that we're going to cover. I don't know. Did you have any other comments? I mean, it was your event. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I mean, I just want to thank everyone who was able to make the trip for coming. I had a blast. Hope you guys did too. We ate a lot of lobster and clam chowder. We drank a lot of beers. And it was just like throwing a big party for all of our friends, the different old school communities, and a celebration of what this is all supposed to be about. And just humbled and blown away by the outpouring of support, and everyone who was donating prizes and supporting the charity, and just everyone who showed up in a variety of different ways throughout the weekend. It was wonderful, and I'm looking forward to to doing more events in the future.
Awesome. Well, that sounds good. Yeah, it looked amazing. I wasn't there, but I was trying to follow along as best I could, and it looked like a pretty amazing time. So, but yeah, thanks for joining me. I guess
Pleasure always.
we'll call it quits, and yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
All right, we'll see you later.
Bye.